It's time for Health Futures with Cypress HomeCare Solutions, Bob Roth. This is Arizona's only show dedicated to providing you with expert advice on how to live a longer, healthier, and happier life. To learn more, call 602-264-8009. That's 602-264-8009. Now, here's your host, Bob Roth.
Good afternoon. It must be Friday, and you're listening to Health Futures Taking Stock in You. I'm your host, Bob Roth, and if this is your first time tuning in to our show, Health Futures is about how our older adult population can live a healthier, happier life. And how do we do this? We bring extraordinary guests to the show, and today is no different. We've got a really fun-packed show here to talk about really important information, and it is Friday, and we're coming at you live here April 6th from the Scottsdale studios here at Money Radio, 1510 AM, 105.3 FM, and on the World Wide Web at moneyradio1510.com. So let me introduce our guests here today. Both have been here on the show, some of them multiple times. But the last time this gentleman here to my right was here on the show was really back in October of 2014, so it's hard to believe it's been that long. Steve Wagner, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me, Bob. I was going to say ladies first, but thank you. Thanks for having me back.
Well, it's good to have you back, and for our listening audience, Steve is a Phoenix firefighter and the creator of this great not-for-profit that we'll talk about called Right Care Foundation. And just to your right, my left, and yes, you're right, I should have started with Stephanie, and hopefully she'll forgive me, Stephanie Bivens, who is a certified elder law attorney. Her law firm is focused on estate planning, elder law, and special needs planning. Stephanie was on our show last September of 2015. Welcome back.
Thank you for having me, Bob.
Well, it's good to have you back, and really today's show is going to be focused in on National Health Care Decision Day, and otherwise it's known as NHDD, and it is really a week period. It's between April 16th and April 22nd, but we like to say it's April 16th is National Healthcare Decision Day. We didn't want to make it on tax day, April 15th, so we want to be a little bit different, but it's really about, as they say on their website, their tagline is, it always seems too early until it's too late. And both of these folks that are in my studio are impacted by this every day. And I just want to throw it out there. National Healthcare Decisions Day, Stephanie, how important is this?
It's really important. Statistics out there show that most Americans do not have any estate planning in place, and in particular, no medical directives in place. So when we talk about medical directives, in Arizona, we really have three distinct directives, although you can kind of combine them a little bit. But in general, it's a healthcare power of attorney, which designates someone to make medical decisions for you when you cannot communicate and make medical decisions for yourself. It's as simple as that. Everyone over the age of 18 should have a healthcare power of attorney. They're simple, they're easy to put in place, and it avoids so much conflict, drama, and potential confusion as to who you would entrust to make your medical decisions if ever you could not for any period of time. The second medical directive...
Can I ask one
Sure.
question? So over the age of 18, why 18?
Because prior to age 18, your mom and dad or your legal guardian get to control all of that stuff for you. The minute you turn 18, you are a legal adult in this country, and that means mom and dad no longer have the ability just to make your medical decisions because they're mom and dad or your legal guardian. So, if an 18-year-old is in a car accident, which of course is every parent's greatest fear with young drivers, in the hospital for some period of time, emergency responders are working on that child or that young adult. They're in the hospital. That young adult is not able to communicate and make their own medical decisions. Who's going to do that, right?
Exactly. And for our listening audience, that means your child who may be going away to college.
Yes.
And they live out of state. You want to have this.
Absolutely. I have a case in point. I have 2 kids, a 22-year-old son and a 19-year-old daughter. So last year when my daughter turned 18 and she's grown up practically in my law practice, living this, hearing about all of this stuff at the dinner table every night and working summers filing and whatnot, she calls this adulting. And so I made her do her healthcare power of attorney, financial power of attorney, living will, the whole thing, had the whole conversation with her. And at the end of the process, she turned to me and she said, "Mom, I don't know if I like this adulting stuff." So now I joke with my 80-year-old clients, this is great. You finally got into the adulting stuff. Every adult needs it. In Arizona, we have mental health power of attorney as well, which is unique to Arizona. And what it does is it specifically allows your agent that you designate in your mental health power of attorney to consent to your inpatient psychiatric hospital treatment. Most of my clients look at me like, "Hey, Stephanie, I've never had a mental health diagnosis. Why are you talking to me about this?" Right? Particularly in our aging population, I work with a lot of families who have a loved one with Alzheimer's, dementia, Parkinson's, Lewy body syndrome. There are certain medical conditions where you might also be manifesting behavioral disturbances, paranoia, aggression, agitation. You're not mentally ill per se. You have a medical condition, but if you are exhibiting mental illness behaviors, the doctor may need you to get onto different medications. And if your behaviors are so severe that we need to do that in a hospital level setting, the mental health power of attorney allows your agent to consent to that treatment without having to come and pay a lawyer like me lots and lots of your money to pursue an emergency mental health guardianship. And as I tell all of my clients, that's why I'm talking to my estate planning clients about having a mental health guardianship. Not because I think it's ever going to be needed, but if it ever is, in that rare instance, it saves time, it saves money. And, I'm a lawyer. I like going to court. I will guarantee you I'm pretty much the only one having a good time, right? My clients are not enjoying the experience and the cost of that process. So
And the cost is more than financial; it's the emotional cost. Absolutely. Because now you're telling somebody that they are not mentally fit to be caring for themselves.
Absolutely.
And I'm going to take that away from you.
And they get a lawyer, and the process can become adversarial, very quick, and very expensive.
And it's not temporary; it ends up being permanent.
Absolutely.
The resentment could last a lifetime.
Absolutely, and all adult children get notice if this is about elderly mom and dad. So even children mom and dad don't like, even children mom and dad have not had contact with, may have equal priority to the one child who has been actively involved, engaged, caring, and concerned advocate. So it can cause a lot of issues. And then the last medical directive is the living will. The living will is the document that actually says what kind of medical care and treatment you do or do not want in any circumstance, but most people use it for end-of-life medical direction. So normally when I explain that to clients, the first thing that comes to mind and their eyes light up and they say, "Oh, that's the pull the plug one, right?" And as, curt and maybe awful as that sounds, yes. If you were of the mind where if after all medical reasonable treatment had been attempted and you were in an end-of-life, unconscious circumstance through a brain injury or some other vegetative type comatose diagnosis, and you wouldn't want your life artificially prolonged on machines, tubes, medications, etc., just to be like that, that's where you would put this direction. Your wishes might be opposite. You might say, "I want everything." That's fine. They're your wishes. They should be honored. So these are the big directives that this national movement with Healthcare Decisions Day is trying to promote.
So as we wind down our first segment, it's hard to believe, there are 3 documents that you just described. You described the healthcare power of attorney. Mm-hmm. You described the mental healthcare power of attorney. And then you described the living will.
Correct.
Those are the 3 components of the National Healthcare Decisions Health Day.
Correct.
Did I say that right? Yeah, I did. I got a little Bruce Springsteen playing in my head, so I can get off track real easy being Friday. But it's so important to talk about these things. And when we come back for the second segment, I really want to engage you, Steve, because you're out there as a first responder, Phoenix firefighter, and you come across these individuals that don't have these things. And what do? Or they may have them, they can't find them. So there are things that you have to do. You're listening to Health Futures Taking Stock in You. I'm Bob Roth, your host. I've got Steve Wagner and Stephanie Bivens in the studio. It's National Healthcare Decision Day. Stay tuned. We'll be right back.
Now back to Health Futures, taking stock in you. If you have questions about your own or your loved one's future health care, call 602-264-8009. Now, here's your host, Cypress HomeCare Solutions, Bob Roth.
Welcome back. You're listening to Health Futures, taking stock in you. I'm your host, Bob Roth, and we're in our second segment. If you missed the first one, you'll want to tune in to cypresshomecare.com. Click on the button that says media. The third drop down is radio show, and you'll find this show, and you'll find about 200 others that we've been bringing to you for the last 5 years. So when we left off the first segment, we were talking about these really important documents. Actually, Stephanie Bivens is here in our studio. She is a certified elder law attorney. She has this law practice called Bivens and Associates, and they're an Arizona law firm focusing on estate planning, elder law, and special needs planning. And we also have here in the studio Steve Wagner. He's with Right Care Foundation, and he's also a firefighter for Phoenix Fire Department. Been doing that for how long? 14, 15 years?
15 with Phoenix, and about a year and a half before that.
A year and a half before that. Okay.
A little bit of time.
Well, you don't look that old. So what were you, playing fireman when you were a kid or something? Is that year and a half?
No, I'm blushing.
So I want to pivot back to Stephanie because she talked about these three documents. She was talking about the healthcare power of attorney. She talked about that everyone over the age of 18 should have this one. She talked about the mental health care power of attorney, and then she also talked about the living will. But when we were at the break, you were talking about this bonus document.
Right. So everyone over the age of 18 should have those first three documents we mentioned. But there's also a fourth medical directive, and that's commonly referred to as the DNR, short for Do Not Resuscitate. And the statute is called Pre-Hospital Medical Directive, if you want to be really technical. Not everybody wants or needs a DNR, so that's why we kind of refer to this as the bonus one. This is on an as-needed basis. The purpose of the DNR is to indicate when the patient does not want CPR administered. So most individuals, if they're healthy, they're not suffering from any terminal illness, chronic medical condition. If we had a cardiac event, we would want to be resuscitated, right? But if you were in the former category and you were terminally ill, very, very elderly, or for whatever other reason would not want CPR in the event of a cardiac event, a DNR might make sense for you. And it's such an important document that it actually has to be signed to be valid in front of your medical doctor or a nurse to be valid, and it should be on bright orange paper. So it's also commonly referred to as the orange form.
And the orange form needs to be put on the refrigerator, right?
Yeah, common.
Not in the refrigerator.
No,
on the refrigerator.
Common recommendation is that it be put on the outside door, to be clear, of the refrigerator or the freezer. And the reason is that the refrigerator is the most common household appliance in this country. So 911 responders have been advised when you're responding, that's going to be the appliance. Hopefully, if somebody has a DNR in place, it's going to be obviously visible, and that might be a good spot to make it visible. But I'm sure Steve is going to have a lot more to say about what happens when you really are responding to that 911 call and what happens.
Yeah, as you can imagine, it's intended to be there. But, Steve, add some reality in what you see every day. The 15 years you've been on the force, and you're doing this first responding multiple times a day.
Well, the DNR form is a very important document to Mrs. Smith or Mr. Smith. We have a sworn duty, and I'm speaking here as a firefighter. We have a sworn duty to do our level best to return them to normal living. We also have a sworn duty to honor their wishes. The only way that we can honor those wishes in the situations that you described, somebody who has multiple disease pathophysiologies, and they're most likely in a skilled nursing type environment, very ill, that they absolutely have to be passionate about and make sure that their family members know that this document exists. But on the other hand, there are also folks who are enjoying their golden years and enjoying their time, and emergencies happen. And just in case sudden cardiac arrest might happen, those folks may want to survive that event, as you alluded to. So when those events happen and 911 is summoned and we arrive on the scene, one of the first questions we have as we're beginning a resuscitation immediately on our arrival is, does this patient have an advance directive? Does this patient have a DNR? So for your listening audience, it's extremely important, whether you live at home or whether you're in the care of paid caregivers at an assisted living facility or a senior living environment or a skilled nursing facility, that you become very passionate about where is that document. The concept of having it on the refrigerator is great, and I agree. It's an obvious place that we might see it. But if somebody collapses in their backyard, we never see the fridge, or the cat may have knocked it off the refrigerator. So what we encourage and what we talk about is, with our foundation, the Right Care Foundation, is what can community do, what can families do, and what can the caregiving industry do before the fire truck arrives. So there are a number of things that come to play. If somebody doesn't have advanced directives and would wish to return to normal living, immediate chest compressions, immediate resuscitation to keep the brain alive is absolutely essential before the fire truck arrives on the scene. Now, if the patient has an advanced directive and doesn't want resuscitation, the only way we're going to know that is if it's presented to us immediately upon arrival. So what we want to do is save lives of those who want to be saved, but save them in such a manner that they can return to normal living, if that's their wish. Or simultaneously, we want to honor the wishes of those who don't want that resuscitation.
I love it. I mean, either way, you want to know. And again, it goes back to what you talked about, Stephanie. It's about making your wishes understood. And you said something before we even started the show. Talked about your days when you worked for the Hospice of the Valley, when you were on their, what was the committee you were on?
I was on the ethics committee.
The ethics committee.
Yeah, for many years ago. And what always struck me was a comment of their then executive director, who's a physician, of course. And she said at one of our meetings, you know, everybody thinks the living will is about the patient, and it's the patient's wishes and the patient's self-determination. It's actually really about the family. It's the gift to the family from the patient, because it's not the patient making the end-of-life medical decision. It's the family, right? Or the agent under the healthcare power of attorney given the instructions by the living will. And so it takes away guilt. It helps diffuse conflict among the family. One child thinks mom would have wanted X. Another family member thinks mom would have wanted Y. It takes away all of those types of really highly charged emotions. So, you know, when you're thinking about doing your medical directives, I like to say if you're a control person, and I'm a lawyer, so I can say I'm A-type, right? So if you're an A-type, you kind of want to be in control. These documents speak for you when you cannot speak for yourself. You know, that's what they're for, self-determination. But at the heart of it, it's really about giving to your family. Because if they have to make these decisions one day, think about what a blessing it will be to them to know they're making the right decisions.
I would just like to add to your comment about that gift. When advanced directive wishes are honored, unbelievable amounts of emotional strife and financial cost can be avoided. What I'd like to point out is that if these advanced directives are in place and are available at time of need in an acute medical emergency, they can be honored. But if they're not, it becomes very, very expensive when you consider all of the efforts medically and in terms of resuscitation at the hospital and long-term care, subsequent long-term care that results after the fact. So when you talk about preserving, I know when I leave money to my kids, I want them to have it.
Right.
I don't want to spend it down in my unwanted resuscitation.
Right. And there can be expensive legal costs and battles.
Expensive legal costs and battles, and a statistic that I've shared in the past, and I want to share it here with our listening audience, 30% of all Medicare expenditures are attributed to the 5% of the beneficiaries that die each year, with 1/3 of that occurring in the last month of life. Do you realize that? And if we just had people understanding that they needed to have advanced directives. You know, there's a project, and we'll talk about it at the third segment here. It's called the Conversation Project. 90% intend to do it, 27% actually do it. You've been listening to Health Futures Taking Stock in You. We're at halftime. Stick around. We'll be right back.
Now back to Health Futures, taking stock in you. If you have questions about your own or your loved one's future health care, call 602-264-8009. Now, here's your host, Cypress HomeCare Solutions, Bob Roth.
Welcome back. You're listening to Health Futures, taking stock in you. And we're here on our third segment, and we are talking National Healthcare Decision Day. While it's April 6th and the official day doesn't start for another 10 days, it's no better time to talk about it right now. And I'm very privileged to have two incredible guests here in the studio. I got Stephanie Bivens. She's with the Bivens and Associates law firm. They're certified elder law attorneys. Their law firm is focusing on estate planning, elder law, and special needs planning. And then I have Steve Wagner, who is a first responder with Phoenix Firefighters, 15 plus years, and he also created this great foundation called the Right Care Foundation. We'll talk a little bit more about that later in this segment and certainly in the fourth segment. But when we left off in the second segment, we were talking about the wishes and what they are and how do we make sure that they're recorded. Stephanie talked about the 4 documents: the healthcare power of attorney. She said everyone over the age of 18 should have one. Mental health care power of attorney, the living will, and then the bonus document being the do not resuscitate document. And yes, it is a pretty orange form that needs to be put up at the refrigerator, but as Steve indicated to us, it needs to be somewhere where we as first responders can have access to it. Because if we don't have access to it, our job is to keep you alive. And you talked about drilling holes and putting tubes down you and everything like that, right?
Yes, absolutely. And really back to the discussion from the previous segment, when it is possible at any time, that advanced directive needs to be in the hands of somebody that when you're incapacitated and cannot answer for yourself, that they can provide that information immediately upon the arrival of a first responder. So whether that's during the day or whether that's 12 o'clock noon or 12 o'clock midnight, what we encourage folks to do is to become passionate about this issue. If you want to remain in control of what's going to happen to you when you cannot make decisions for yourself, you need to have conversations with your family members. You need to be passionate about such that about it such that your family members, when you can't speak for yourself, will speak for you. If you are in the care of a licensed care provider, you need to be passionate about making sure. In fact, you should demand that your care providers provide that information when you can't speak for yourself. And that's the only way that we're going to be able to honor that wish. We love saving people. We are discouraged when we save people, when we know that what their life looks like is a life on a ventilator.
I've got two people here in my studio. One, I got a person who loves saving people, and I got another person that loves going to court. But she also likes to make sure her clients are prepared and making sure she has these documents. You know, Stephanie, you said something at the break, is that if you don't prepare these documents, the court will make that decision for you.
Oh, sure.
And the state has made that.
Yeah. So if you don't have a healthcare power of attorney that you put into place while you were competent and able to, our legislature has a statute in place called the Surrogate Medical Decision Maker, and here's who our legislature says gets to make your medical decisions. Doesn't matter if you like these people, trust these people, here's who's in control, right? So if you didn't pick, first it's your spouse if you're married. If you are not married, majority vote among your adult children. I know that just sent shivers down a few people's spines out there, right? These are not children who know us, not children who advocate for our medical well-being, children that you've had contact with consistently, all adult children. So, you know, if you have two kids, you love them both, they both love you, but they cannot communicate well with each other, that could result in a poor outcome for you. Delays in healthcare, drama, even court proceedings. If you don't have adult children, then we look to your parents, no parents, siblings. Then we start kind of getting down into somebody who acts like they like you, a significant partner, or anybody else who acts like they know and they show special care and concern for you, I think is the similar language from the statute. So, and lastly, if there is nobody around the medical ethics committee at the hospital, a team of doctors on the ethics committee will make your decisions. So it's really important that you pick for yourself. I cannot tell you how many times a year we get these really sad phone calls into my office that go something like this. Hi, I'm calling because my father needs a power of attorney. Great. Tell us a little bit more about what's going on. Well, he's in a medically induced coma in the hospital.
Too late.
Very too late.
Too late.
Right? He has to grant the authority. Well, now he cannot. So what that means, we are likely going to be going to court and getting a judge to determine who will serve in Dad's best interest for his personal and his medical decision making. And we're going to be doing a guardianship. Likely, if Dad didn't have any medical directives because he never saw a lawyer to get them done, he probably also never had a financial power of attorney. And we're also going to then get the court involved in the oversight of the administration and the management of the finances, which is called a conservatorship. Everybody has equal priority to be appointed. The family may be fighting about who's best. Everybody gets noticed. Now personal things become public in a way that nobody would have wanted. And I get paid a lot of money.
And you get to go to court.
And I get to go to court. And as I always say, I'm the only one having a really good time. I'm a lawyer, right? I like to bring solutions to my clients. And when we have to go to court, particularly on an emergency situation, it is one of the most rewarding things I can do to bring stability to a very chaotic, sometimes almost a life and death circumstance for somebody. But I would much prefer to be on the advanced planning side, have sat down with the patient who would be my client, and get all of these documents in place, know their wishes, have them pick, have them set all of this in motion. So in the event of incapacity, we've got it covered and we're not having to go to court. Having these documents in place is your best chance at avoiding court. It's not always possible, but it's your best alternative.
So documents are important. And the one thing I hear you say loud and clear, have an advocate. Choose somebody.
Yes.
Because if you don't choose somebody else will choose that person. And as you described the myriad of examples, especially with adult children, you know, every family has their challenges. We'll leave it at that. And you know what? If you have children that you haven't spoken to in a few years, or you've been ostracized with, or, you know, you could be, you know, still married to somebody and maybe separated and not have a relationship with this person, and an event would happen, that decision could end up with that person, and you would be at their mercy. So beside having these documents, these 4 documents, you need to have an advocate.
Absolutely. And clients ask me all the time, okay, I've got these documents. What do I do with them, right? And Steve, this is to your point. Where are all of the places you can store and disseminate these documents for the best potential outcome at time of need? Somebody's going to know where they are, and they're actually going to be useful, right? So we routinely have our clients sign releases. So we mail them into their primary care doctor, their specialists. We will have them registered with the Arizona Secretary of State's Medical Directives Registry. Very few people in Arizona are aware. That's a free service through the Arizona Secretary of State's office. You can go on their website. I actually have that. So if anybody is interested, it's azsos.gov, G-O-V, /services/advanced-directives. But if you just get on the Arizona Secretary of website and put in the search term advanced directives, it'll get you right to it. It's simple. It's free. Hospital staff has been trained. If you're in a car accident, you show up, you're nonverbal, nobody was with you in the vehicle, your advocate person isn't there. They find your little directives registry card in your wallet. I tell clients, keep it next to your ID or your health insurance card. I think it's most likely to be found there. It's another way somebody can find these.
You know what? Last January 2017, I had knee surgery. I had my knee scoped over at Honor Health, and when I went, they asked me if I had advanced directives, and I said yes. They said, please bring them. And I brought them when I went in to check in, and the woman gave them back to me in 30 seconds. I said, I thought you wanted these. She goes, no, we got them. I said, what do you mean? She goes, they've been scanned in our system. I said, are they permanent record? They said, yes. They said, if you come back for another procedure, we have these in our possession. So when we come back on our 4th segment, I want to talk about this law that is about ready to get put in place. So stay tuned. You're listening to Health Futures Taking Stock in You. We're down 3. We got 1 more to go. We'll be right back.
Now back to Health Futures, taking stock in you. If you have questions about your own or your loved one's future health care, call 602-264-8009. Now, here's your host, Cypress HomeCare Solutions, Bob Roth.
Welcome back. You're listening to Health Futures, taking stock at you. We're on our 4th segment. If you're just tuning in, we're talking National Health Care Decision Day. And for those that don't know this is an initiative from the Conversation Project. And if you really want to learn more about the Conversation Project, go out to theconversationproject.org. And there's all kinds of great information talking about the need and the reason to do this. And I've got here in the studio, I got Stephanie Bivens. She's with Bivens and Associates. They're certified elder law attorneys. Her law firm's focused on estate planning, elder law, and special needs planning. And I've got Steve Wagner here in the studio. He's a first responder, Phoenix firefighter, and also has this not-for-profit that we'll talk about in a few minutes here called the Right Care Foundation. When we left off on the 3rd segment, I talked about a bill that was going to be considered, and I was corrected at the break, and that is it is a bill that actually is now law. And that bill is called the Healthcare Directives Registry. And Steve, if you could tell us a little bit about this, because the intention of this is very honorable, to have a repository of all this information that anybody can access, especially first responders. So tell us, here it is, a year later. What has happened over this last year? Are you able to get access to this? Is this an evolving process? How do we make certain that this thing works?
Well, House Bill 2076 is a giant step forward. And I believe it was 2001, the Secretary of State began maintaining a database of advanced directives. But it really was cumbersome to access, required passcodes, etc., and was really only available to the statutory defined healthcare provider, which is physicians, nurse practitioners, osteopaths, etc. But it kind of left out some of the most important people in the decision-making process as to whether or not you're going to be resuscitated at 2 o'clock in the morning, and that would be your first responder responding to your 911 emergency. So this bill, now law, is essentially a discussion with the Secretary of State to create a process by which that information is more easily available to first responders. Fortunately, discussion was had about including first responders in that data stream as healthcare providers for the purpose of this bill. So the good news is we, first responders, will have that information at some point in the future. The goal long term is for your orange form, your DNR, to be available immediately electronically and maybe even en route to your emergency. So that way, this question of who has the DNR? Is there one? Is it available? And then the actions, the immediate decision that we have to make in the field, we might have that information prior to our arrival. Currently, that's not the case, but there's hope. And I applaud Representative Heather Carter for sponsoring the bill.
Yeah, she's an amazing person and a big supporter of home care, home health, and everything health-related to folks in our community. And I've been privileged to have her as a guest here on our studio. So I want to pivot back to Stephanie as we wind things down, because I want Steve, as we close, to talk a little bit about Right Care Foundation and how that came to be. Any closing remarks about National Healthcare Decision Day? As I understand it, 4 documents. We're talking about healthcare power of attorney, which includes everyone over 18, mental health care power of attorney, living will, and as you called the bonus document, the do not resuscitate. And we also talked about in the last segment, we talked about having an advocate, because if we don't have somebody that we've appointed that as that advocate on our behalf, that'll be done for us.
Exactly. So, no, you've got it, Bob. Everybody over the age of 18 needs to have these documents. They are part of an overall estate plan. And I think, unfortunately, people focus on the will, the trust, the money side of the estate plan. And while that is also very, very important, medical directives, right? Your personal well-being, who's going to make your medical decisions, where you're going to live, how you're going to receive your care if you're not able to make those decisions, that should be equally important to everybody. So it's a part of the overall estate plan. And I would encourage people to talk to your attorney about it. There's documents you can get, but as one of the lawyers in my office says, do you want to get your will next to the garage sale sign at Office Max or Staples? Maybe not. Everybody's situation is slightly different. I think you need advice of counsel who's been there, done that, and can really weigh in and help you think through and understand all of your options.
Well, Stephanie has built an incredible law firm. I've had the privilege of knowing you for about 15 years. And if you need to reach Stephanie or anyone from her office, you can reach them at 480-922-1010 or go out to bivenslaw.com. I actually visited your website very recently. You really keep up with the times. There's a lot of good information up there, and you've got a stellar cast, too. When I say you got a team, it's not just you.
I couldn't do it all by myself.
Well, it says Bivens and Associates. The associates are a big part of who she is and what you do.
Everybody is phenomenal. I work with absolute rock stars every day, from the administrative folks in my office to the paralegals, legal assistants, to the other attorneys. I cannot sing their praises enough. Everybody's got a heart. We're in this for the right reasons for our clients, and I like to think we go above and beyond.
I know you do. I absolutely do. So as we wind down, Right Care, real quick, we got about a minute. Tell me how this thing got created and what do you guys do?
Well, I can just sum it up in this. My years of experience as a first responder caused me to become extremely passionate about what happens before the fire truck arrives. And I so much so that I created this 501c3 nonprofit for the purpose of encouraging community care providers, industry to save lives neurologically intact. In other words, save people so they can return to normal living if that's what they want. And if they don't want that, we want to honor their wishes. So our foundation is about saving lives and honoring wishes of those who are in the care of care professionals.
And if you want to learn more, the number I have down is 602-614-0069.
Correct.
And you can reach Steve Wagner, Wagner, S as in Sam, Wagner, at rightcare.org. And if you want to contribute to this great organization, is it www.rightcare.org?
That's correct. www.rightcare.org.
And there's ways to donate to this great
You can go
cause.
right on our website. We'd love to hear from you, and we'd love to get you involved. Help us save lives and honor wishes in Arizona.
National Healthcare Decision Day. Listen, get yourself an advocate. Fill out the paperwork. Make your wishes known. Because if you don't, somebody might do them for you. Well, listen, I've really enjoyed being with you, Stephanie, once again. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
And Steve, thank you as well. Make it a great day. Have a great weekend. And tune in next week. I've got Dr. Kerry Schnitzer here on the studio. He's from HomeCare, Arizona. We're going to talk about a little bit more about National Healthcare Decision, and we're going to talk about some of the great things that HomeCare, Arizona is doing. So we're going to sign off right now. Make it a great day. Have a great weekend, and we'll be back next week.
There's no place like home. You've been listening to Bob Roth's Health Futures. If you have questions about your own or your loved one's future health care, call Cypress HomeCare Solutions at 602-264-8009. That's 602-264-8009. Or visit CypressHomeCare.com. Be sure to join Health Futures with Bob Roth every Friday at noon, right here on Money Radio 1510 and 105.3 FM.